Okay, so move on here to the second major area of exploration discovery. We're going to talk about the process of discovery and some of the leaders that were involved in all of this. So, take a look at China to begin with. China's major explorer was Zheng He, and you learned about him in the Crash Course video. He is the one that was responsible for a lot of the trade going on in the Indian Ocean, and he did a lot for the nation of China, made a lot of money, and he was sponsored by the King of China, and the King of China made sure that he had the money to go out and to make these massive voyages using these huge ships, sailing all down the coast of Africa and trading with people there and bringing it back to China. Now, one of you are going to spend some time researching and reporting a little bit more about him, but that's the basics of Zheng He. Now, Portugal, we know, was one of the leading countries of Europe that was searching out the rest of the world. And based off of what we know about Portugal, they were in search of two things. They were in search of gold and Christians. And one of the people from Portugal that was really spurring this was Prince Henry the Navigator. Now, Prince Henry, he was not a sailor himself. However, he had a school for sailors and he taught them everything that he knew about sailing. And many of the explorers learned from him or learned from some of the things that he taught to help them to be able to go out and to sail out on the ocean. So, Prince Henry the Navigator was one of the greatest figures in the history of exploration because of his school of navigation, that he inspired many others to go further and to have the knowledge that they needed to be able to sail well. A few of these other guys we are not going to talk about a whole lot because you are going to do in your report, but you should know a couple things about Bartolomeu Diaz. He is looking for a water route to India. And in its process of doing so, he is going to sail from Portugal. He is going to sail south and he's going to sail east, trying to round Africa and find the tip of Africa so that they could make their way to India that direction. And he eventually did. And when he finally got to the tip of Africa, he named it the Cape of Good Hope. We also have Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama is going to find a water route to India. He is going to go further than Diaz. He is going to actually make it to India. Bartolomeu Diaz did not make it all the way there. He came back home. And so Vasco da Gama, he follows Diaz's original path. He makes it around the Cape of Good Hope all the way back to India. And he is the first European to get to India by water. And he did not sail far away from the coast. He stayed right along that coastline because, once again, many of these sailors were too afraid to move away from the coastline very far because they didn't know if they'd be able to make it back. So, he sails right along the coastline, makes it all the way to India. That is his major claim to fame. When we look at the trade throughout the Indian Ocean, we know that China had a major control over that until we get Vasco da Gama and Bartholomew Diaz crashing the party a little bit. Well, by this point, Zheng He had died, and the emperor who was sponsoring all these trips throughout the Indian Ocean had also died, and the new emperor did not have as much value placed on trade and shipping. And he decided that he was going to withdraw some of the money from investing in those water routes, and he was going to put that into security at home, helping to build part of the Great Wall. So therefore, there were all these Chinese ships that were no longer being used, and that meant that there was an opening for the Portuguese to get their foothold into some of these African countries that now they could begin trading with them. There were a couple things that they did there that were not necessarily the greatest thing, but they put together what they called a trading post empire, where they just picked and chose which cities they wanted to bombard or they wanted to attack because they knew that there was valuable trading goods there. So from the comfort of their ships, they would attack the city walls and they would conquer that city and declare it property of Portugal. They would also include there uh, a cartaz, which was a trade license for the port cities of the Indian Ocean. If you did not have that Cartaz, then you did not have the ability to trade. So Portugal was forcing the people to fall into their own system and limiting those that could trade with the cities along those trade routes. As we move on and talk about Spain, Christopher Columbus is going to be a key figure for Spain. Now, Christopher Columbus, he was not originally from Spain, but his home country of Italy was not going to sponsor him. So he believed that he could reach the east by sailing west. He could not persuade Portugal to let him go, even though he wanted to sail for Portugal. And so he went to Spain and he talked to Ferdinand and Isabella, and they agreed to let him go. He had 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And of course, we know from the nursery rhyme that we learned in elementary school that in 1492, he sailed the ocean blue, but he actually landed in 1492 as he discovered the continent in the Americas. We're going to talk about the line of demarcation another time. Hopefully, it's been helpful, and we'll see you next time.